basically what happened is that there were quite a lot of people on Rogue Philosophy, the Discord that I was the owner of, that just went absolutely fucking ballistic. I mean, the hysteria and the insanity that I witnessed yesterday over this was absolutely fucking crazy. I mean, I was dogpiled by you guys, just with the most ridiculous demands that we ban Efilism, that we erase every mention of it from the site and from all other sites. I mean, what is the expectation here, guys? That I delete my movie, that I erase 10 years of work, that I close communities that I've put a whole lot of blood, sweat, and tears trying to build. I mean, it's just such an unfair, ridiculous expectation. And I'm not gonna stand for it, and so I left. It is not Inmendham's fault. It is not my fault that there are going to be crazy people that are attracted to this philosophy. Every community, every society, every idea in the world practically is susceptible to this. It is susceptible to insane people coming through and misinterpreting and mishandling and doing something nuts. And yes, some of the things that we're talking about, some of the rhetoric, some of the ideas do have the potential to for insane people to latch onto them and do something crazy. There was somebody whose name I will not mention that apparently was a huge fan of Inmendham, a big Efilist, that was making a lot of threats about, killing his girlfriend and all this. What's being said here is that somehow Gary told this person to go kill his girlfriend. And I'm sorry, that is such absolute bullshit. I don't believe that for one fucking minute. I'm sorry. Crazy people are gonna be crazy. I don't think he's advocating murdering people. You can't ban Efilism, and that was the demand that was being made of me yesterday. Nor should you ban Efilism, nor should it be devalued. Efilism has brought some of the best things to this discussion. It's built very productive antinatalists and Efilists that are really would like to try to see suffering end in the world. So I don't really know what the expectation is. It is my firm belief that it is the superior version of this philosophy, because it's not hiding from some of the more difficult conclusions and consequences of what even very plain Jane antinatalism is saying. Once again, you can't ban Efilism. It just doesn't make any fucking sense. There's too much that Efilism brings to this philosophy that really needs to be understood. And yes, Efilism does deal with all of this, end game stuff, and some of it is really nasty, and some of it I don't like particularly at all. But to suggest that it isn't what all of antinatalism would eventually have to deal with in a real-world scenario is just absolutely insane. It's insane, and people do need to stop running away from that. So, and it also needs to be pointed out that the end game stuff is not at all what Efilism is entirely about. It's not at all what it all that it speaks about. It is the only version of antinatalism that has never, ever, ever made this distinction between animal and human life. It's having a much more complete, making a much more complete diagnosis of the problem. And the problem is really bad. And yes, something should be done about it. And how we do something about it, is not very pleasant in a lot of ways. The party line, not from Efilism, but from sort of everybody that talks about this, is about sterilizing the animals. Yeah, maybe it's a tough pill for me to swallow, frankly, that might not be something that we can do. But I am going to have to stop advocating for that because I don't think that it's reality in the end. And it kills me that it's not reality, because I would rather not suggest doing something sloppier to them. But I do think that I do think that it might be true, unfortunately, that if we're diagnosing life as so bad and we're coming up with some sort of plan and we're in the end game scenario where we're going to extinct ourselves and we have to do something about the animals first, we don't have a lot of great answers or great life is not presenting us with a lot of great options here. And so, yes, maybe you would have to kill one generation to prevent thousands and bazillions of generations after. Maybe that is the only option that's available. Unfortunately, the bad solution may be the only solution in that scenario. I think that's just something that we're going to have to sort of accept and roll with at this point. I firmly believe that people need to grow up in this community a little bit and fully realize that even plain Jane antinatalism has the potential to be a dangerous idea, that it has some rather nasty conclusions built into it based on what the diagnosis is. If you're gonna diagnose the problem of life on planet Earth is really that bad, and it does, and you're going to extend it to all the animals, then the consequences are people are going to want to know how to turn off that machine. So you can't escape red buttons, you can't escape trolley problems. Those were already part of philosophy to begin with. It's completely inevitable that they would be applied to this philosophy. You're not going to escape people wanting to come up with real-world solutions. You can't reason with animals. You can't use philosophy on the animals. And so yes, if we determine that they have to be evacuated from planet Earth, what are the options here if you can't sterilize them? And that's a painful, nasty, awful thing to have to come to grips with. And I'm coming to grips with it. And I think you guys need to come to grips with it too, because nobody is presenting any other options here. And if we are to take responsibility for their existence, we are naturally left with this admittedly terrible question of how to end them. I mean, most of you are behaving as sentiocentric antinatalists. Most of you are behaving as Efilistic antinatalists, but are running away from that fact. And some of that has got to fucking stop. I don't want to not be an Efilist anymore. I don't want to give up my podcast or any of the other projects I've been doing. This is my life. This is my chosen path in this fucking existence that I have. I put 10 years of blood, sweat, and tears into this thing. Not to be dramatic, but it is true. I've dedicated my life to this, and I want to dedicate whatever is left of my fucking life to it. I believe that this philosophy, in its entirety, at its best, can not only prevent some of the suffering, but all of the suffering, and I want to see it do that. And yes, I don't want I don't want the rhetoric to cause harm to anybody, but there also needs to be some recognition that across the board, this is saying some very disturbing things, and it has some very disturbing consequences, and there's no way to run away from that. But you can't pin all that on Gary, you can't pin all that on me, you can't pin all that on Efilism. It's the unfortunate situation that life leaves us in, and it's the unfortunate situation we're in having a window into what needs to happen, unfortunately.